Hey there everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Let's continue building the 650 scale Enterprise D projects. Welcome back to update number 12 on the 650 scale Enterprise D projects. In the last update, we got the majority of the construction work done, which means in this update, we're going to be working on seam work, and there is a significant amount of seam work to do on the project. If you remember, the saucer and the neck, there's a bit of a gap there that's going to have to be filled. There's also some alignment issues there that are going to have to be dealt with through putty work. We're essentially going to have to sculpt that area so that the line from the neck goes smoothly into the saucer area. There are some significant areas in front of the chiller grills on the nacelles that have to be dealt with. We've got a significant gap between the deflector dish and the bottom hull section. The area where the upper secondary hull meets the pylons needs to be dealt with. Lots of stuff that has to be done, so we're going to do that, and hopefully we're going to be able to deal with that in a timely manner because I want to get the rest of the ship primed, the whole thing primed, and maybe even some base color on the ship before the end of the update. So let's get right at it.
But before we get started, why not take a moment and click the subscribe button? And while you're here, click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single update.
First order of business on detail seam work week has been to add these walls in here on the impulse engines. Now, this one is still setting. Actually, this particular piece on this side is still setting, so I'm not going to touch it, do anything with it right now. But once it has cured, I will need to do some seam work, some putty work in there before I install the engines themselves. The next thing I'm going to do is work on this seam. Now, there's two issues with this neck seam here. One is that the saucer does not quite match height-wise with the back of the neck. Now, that's not a problem. We dealt with this on the Don Shoko D. I'll be able to lift the back of the saucer up to meet and then allow that to cure up inside. The bigger issue is that these levels here do not match. So we're going to need to do a little bit of work. It's not as bad on this side, but it is significantly worse on this side. So we're going to have to do some work to make sure that this matches over here. And I think we're going to have to build some of this up and re-sculpt a little bit. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's just a nature with this particular kit. I have given that information to Helios that these areas don't quite line up properly. So hopefully when they re-release this with their updates that they will do something about these areas. So that's where I am going to be getting some putty in first, now that these are in place, and we'll see how this seam turns out. Some first round putty work to show you. Obviously, I can't bring you along for every step of this process because that would just take way too long, but some highlights to show you. I've got the first bit of putty work done in the impulse engine here. The neck is a rather big deal on this project. Not only do I have to fill the gap, but I've also got to smooth this transition between the saucer and the neck here because there is a bit of a step, which I have let Helios know about so that they can make modifications for their next round kit, which I also hear comes with a metal armature, which will be very wonderful for anybody who wants to build this thing. I've got putty work happening here on the back end. I am starting to build out this section right here because the plastic just becomes a little bit short. The top part is just a little bit short to the lower part here, and you can actually, without the epoxy sculpt here, you can see the metal piece coming out from there, and it doesn't happen on the other side, it's just on this side, so we just have to build that part out a little bit, sculpt it out. Started to work on these bits here, just starting with this side, doing one side at a time. The other thing that I've started to do is the thruster housing bits that are missing on here. So I've just had to add in a section here, also added it in around here. The tape on here is to help me keep them all the same size. This is where the thruster packs will go. There's supposed to be that bit of filler in the sensor band on this area, so I'm just adding that in with the epoxy sculpt. So I'm doing a combination of epoxy sculpt in some areas and the plastic perfect putty, or the perfect plastic putty, in some areas as well. So those are my two go-tos that I am using on this. So I will bring you along bit by bit as I get some work done. So hopefully you'll see this come along in leaps and bounds. What will be a matter of minutes, hopefully for you, is going to be a matter of days for me, because this is just a slow process where you put some on, you sand it down, or you water sand it down, you put some more on, you water sand it down, and you just work until you get it the way that you want it. Then you put primer on and see how your work's turned out, and then you probably have to do a whole pile more. Want to bring you back for a moment and show you what's going on here. First of all, I've been doing a whole pile of work on the neck area here. You can see that I've built this section out a little bit where it needed to join with the saucer better. Still some refinement work to do, but it's coming along quite nicely. This is the big one, and I wanted to bring you back and just show you how that is going. You can see how there's all kinds of particle debris on there. What I'm doing right now is I'm using a bit of a chisel blade to scrape down all of the high areas. I do that sometimes with a chisel blade like this. Sometimes I use a larger cutting blade, which I would use on one of my bigger knives, and this is what I would use to scrape down the panels on the 1400 Enterprise D. And then sometimes I wet sand it down, and there's just a plethora of options available for crafting, sculpting the epoxy sculpt in these areas so that a terrible step no longer looks like a step, and it looks like the way it's supposed to look. So if you come across any of these situations where parts don't align properly, or they just don't fit right, whatever, you can always work to sculpt them in so that they look like they are going to fit properly. Here's that area. Actually, I'll go under the warp engine for a moment and bring the camera in a wee bit. No, I'll go above. So here's that section that wasn't quite wide enough, and I used the epoxy sculpt to sculpt in a new section, and that looks really good. You can kind of see the edges on it here on the camera, but it does blend in nicely to the hull. Obviously, once we get some gray primer down on this area, we'll be able to see what other areas need more refinement. So that's where we're at with all of this. And then I also wanted to show you the observation lounge here. You see that there are red things stuck into the windows. So I made my own window plugs for this back when I was trying to figure out how I was approaching these windows. So I've now taken these window plugs and I've just inserted them in. That way I can paint everything and it protects the windows. And then the bridge, I have put some liquid mask on, and it's just created a nice bubble of liquid mask on top, and that is going to protect the upper window section of the bridge area there. I do need to mask off the phaser array still, because as soon as we get this work done on the seam work, we're going to be getting the primer on so that we can get a better look at what's going on. And I am expecting that it's only going to be a few more days that I'm going to be working on the putty work on this thing, and we're going to be able to get the primer coat on and the base coat on. And once we get there, things are going to move along pretty quickly with the masking set. I'm about to go live, but I wanted to take a quick video look at what's going on before I do. If you're not aware, I'm live streaming every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, so I'm just about to go to do that, but I want to show you the work I've done on the underside. You can tell that it's been flipped over on its back. I've also had to pull the bench out from the wall here so I can get all the way around this thing because it's too big when it's on its back to be able to flip back and forth. So I'm kind of working at it this way. I've done the seam, the saucer edge seam all the way around, and I've been working on this neck seam. It's nowhere near as bad down here as on the back of the neck. The bottom of the deflector dish seam is looking really good. There's some cleanup in the sensor dish I've got to do with the JB Quick Weld, but that's no big deal. The last of the nacelle seams at the front of the chiller grills are down there. That just needs to be smoothed out. And just a few other bits and pieces. We are really close to being done with the initial seam work. Now what's going to happen is that once I'm done with the initial seam work, I'm going to put a coat of primer over the entire ship. And what that's going to do is it's going to pinpoint the areas that still need some work with the putty. So it's kind of a back and forth journey until you get it the way that you want it. I've got to admit, doing the seam work is the part that I dislike the most, mostly because it's so hard to know when you're actually done, because you can just keep going for such minor incremental improvements. So there's a point where you just have to call it as pretty good and move on. But I'm pretty close to being done the first round. We'll get primer on it, and that'll just highlight any issues that we need to clean up. Hopefully I won't have too many rounds of that, because I want to get that color coat on this thing pretty soon. Seamwork's coming along really well, especially here where the neck meets the saucer, and you can see that we've got some primer on the top part of the ship. The primer really is necessary to show you how much more work is needed on the seam areas. So you can tell that I have done a little bit more refinement work on this area here, same over on the other side, and you can see the seam, you can see the putty work on the neck to the saucer joint. Now here's a thing. The gray primer highlights all of these, but the Aztec painting hides them all. So use the gray primer to show you what work still needs to be done on your seam work, but don't stress over it too much, because your paint scheme is going to hide so much of it here. I had forgotten to add the photon launcher on the back before doing the primer coat, so I've added it there now and done the putty work around it. I've also added the blow-away panels here. You can see how the other one is still curing up with the clamps on it. I was not quite sure if I was going to use the kit-provided blow-away panels here, but I decided to go for it, and they've turned out really well. They're not too high. I was a little bit worried that they might sit up from the hull a little bit too much, or they might not do the curve too well, but they only go part way up, and that's represented on the studio model, so not too concerned about that. Now, obviously, the lower section doesn't have the primer on it. You can really tell with the neck there. I'm going to give some of these areas another shot of the primer on the top. Then we'll flip it over. I've got a couple things that need to be added, greebly-wise, to the bottom, and then we will give it a coat of the primer on the bottom and see what kind of seam work is still necessary under there. But making significant progress, and I can see an end to this stage coming very, very soon. I'm very happy with how it's all turning out. I'm outside right now on the deck underneath a covering, and I am working on getting some color on. I think I pretty much got this thing ready for the color, and I am starting with the saucer section here. So it's hard to tell in this lighting, but there is the darker of the blues down first coat. It's very patchy right now, but I'm doing this in light coats to bring that color out. So yeah, it's gray back there. It's a little bit more blue up front here. A bit of a time jump here. Not only is the entire ship got the base coat of the French blue, but we've got some Aztecs on the lower half of the saucer. This is the first round, the first of the multiple color Aztec pattern going down. This is the main pattern, and there will be the highlights that will go on top of this. And it's turned out very well. Masking set worked out really well. I did have some placement issues on the area here, so I did have to pull them up and reposition them. It would be helpful if there were grid lines built into this kit to help you align them so that you don't go off course, because if you go off course a little bit, it multiplies throughout the whole thing and then you have things not matching up. So I did have to work with that a bit, but the results are really, really good. There are a couple places. There's one here, there's one over here, there it is. And there's one over here where I did miss weeding out a section of the mask. So I'm just gonna tape that off, pull out that mask and put the gray color in there just to finish those off. I think I'm gonna be working next on the neck. And I'll move the neck, then I'll do the lower part of the secondary hull, and then I'll flip the whole thing and I'll do the top. Then we'll go around and do the second round colors. Gonna get all of the main Aztec done first, then we'll move on to the secondary colors. And the goal now, because Wonderfest is in about 11 days, the goal is to get the main Aztecs done, the 4-color Aztec scheme done, so that we can get the phaser arrays installed. That way, although it will still be a work in progress, there won't be any of the decals on it. The The goal is to be able to demonstrate the lighting system at the inner lighting booth at Wonderfest. So make sure that you come and check it out if you're going to be at Wonderfest, although I'm not sure if this video is going to be posted before or after Wonderfest. But if it's posted before Wonderfest and you're seeing this and you're heading to Wonderfest, make sure you stop by and see it. It will still be a work in progress, will not have the decals, but it will be there, and hopefully the main paint job will be complete. Now this looks really cool. This is all of the Aztec masking on the secondary hull. I am about to put paint down on this. Now I've done the tops, well, sorry, not the tops. It looks like the top from this angle. The bottoms of the nacelles, but I'm not going to paint those yet because I still have to do the some masks on the inside here and the other side. I don't want to paint them until I've got the masking on all of it. But I want at least all of this masking on, so any overspray happens when I'm doing this portion, it's fine, it's all masked. So that's all prepared. I'm going to paint the underside of the secondary hull now, and then once that's dry and we remove all of that masking, we'll flip her over and we'll start on the other side. We've got third color going down on these bottom saucer here. The outer area of the phaser array has been done with the third color. The inner area has been. The middle section is not done yet. I want this paint here to dry a little bit more before I'm putting masking down, potentially on top of part of it. But I wanted to show you, I am masking up the neck, and it's essentially stencils that go on for this stage. And it's a lot easier to place them. You align them to the panel you are painting on top of. So in this case, it is the French blue that I am painting on top of, so I'm aligning the gaps in the stencil masks to those panels. So I'm going to do the other side, and we're going to get this area painted up and removed, and that should give enough time for this area to dry so I can do the middle section. And if not, if I don't feel comfortable with that, I'll just move on to the lower secondary hull. We're going to do another little time skip because it is now Post-Wonderfest 2025, and that means that everything that was done for the show is done. That's right, all 4 colors are down. The Aztec pattern is done on the ship. You can also see that the phaser array is installed on the top there. It is also installed on the bottom. And I do apologize, I did gloss over quite substantially the painting process on this model, but don't worry, I have another one of these to do, and so I will fully do a deep dive into the painting process with the motion picture miniature masks on the second go around. I had to put my head down and get as much of this thing done as I could so that it could be on display at Wonderfest, and it was a great time. I'll be doing a recap video from Wonderfest shortly, but this is it. This is the main paint scheme done. Now, I did put some color on the phaser rays, but I think I'm gonna have to put much more on. And I went conservative so that the phaser array effect would come through, but I'm thinking that I'm gonna put a little bit more paint on there. Buzzards are not fully installed. They are pressure fit up to this point. There's still no copper on the chiller grills. When I booted this thing up at Wonderfest, I discovered that there are light leaks on the edges of the housing for the Impulse engine, so I will have to take care of that as well, but there is lots to do still. But this is how things are looking for the end of this update video. And that's going to be it for this update on the 650 scale Enterprise D project. Again, I do apologize for glossing over a bunch of the painting, but this thing had to be done for Wonderfest. It looked really good at the show. One of the clients was able to be there and see it in person. They really liked it. Lots of people gave me great feedback on it, and I'm pleased at how the weekend went. I'm going to do a full recap video of the Wonderfest weekend soon, so stay tuned for that. But if you've enjoyed this update, make sure that you hit that like button. If you're new to my channel or you haven't done so yet, make sure that you hit that subscribe button today. You'll make me very happy if you do. But for now, my name is Andrew, and this is Canadian Starships. Have a great day, everyone.